can tell by your eyes
That raspy, unmistakable voice, the wild wind-blown hair, and those eyes half mischievous, half melancholic. Rod Stewart wasn't just someone you listened to, he was someone you turned around for. From timeless hits like Maggie May to Forever Young, his voice wasn't just a sound of a generation, it became the soundtrack of a lifetime. But few people know that before the fame, before the stadiums, he once dug graves just to make ends meet. He nearly lost his voice to cancer, and he's endured breakups that left scars deeper than any spotlight ever could. Still, just like the ballads, he poured his soul into every somber note in his life, eventually led to a powerful chorus. And for Rod, that chorus is a life as curious as it is grand, a garage that feels like a museum, a miniature world of trains built with childlike wonder, and a heart that never stopped loving music. Behind the applause stands a man who gave everything he had to the life he lived. So, what is it that makes him a legend? Even after more than 60 years, step into the vibrant, thoughtful journey of Rod Stewart. If you enjoy these stories, please remember to hit the like button. It truly helps us, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Before the spotlight ever found him, Rod Stewart was just a boy in the shadows. Could he ever step into the light? Rod Stewart was born in 1945 in post-war North London. The youngest of 5 children in a working-class family, he grew up in a modest rented flat where his siblings' laughter mingled with Al Jolson records spinning from his mother's old phonograph. His father, a Scottish-born bricklayer, didn't have much money, but he carried a quiet strength and a sense of discipline that shaped the home. There were no fancy toys, but Rod had his backyard imagination, and pickup soccer matches to build a childhood on summers were spent chasing the ball through dusty parks. Winters brought the small thrill of picking fallen apples from a neighbor's garden, not out of hunger, but from the innocent mischief of poor kids finding joy where they could. For a time, soccer was everything. At school, Rod was team captain, scrappy, determined, always dreaming. But a failed trial with Brentford FC shattered the fantasy of going pro. And with that dream gone, what was left to carry him out of the quiet life he seemed destined for? At 15, Rod left school and entered the working world first, helping out at a print shop, then hauling goods, and even spending a short stint digging graves at Highgate Cemetery. The labor was tough, but Rod stayed lighthearted, always cracking jokes to ease the weight of the day. Music started creeping in during long afternoons when he'd play the harmonica and hum along to American blues drifting from a neighbor's radio. No one thought much of it, not even Rod himself. Then came a freezing night in early 1961, Leicester Square. 16 years old, Rod stood on the stone steps, a battered harmonica in hand. He played a few simple tunes. A handful of coins clinked into the open box at his feet. But more than the money, it was the strange feeling that stirred inside, a sense that for the first time he'd said something that was truly his own, and someone had heard it. From that night on, Rod didn't play just for fun. He began to believe cautiously, quietly, that maybe this was a path. Not a guaranteed one, but one with hope. Turned away by both the football field and the classroom, Rod Stewart chose the only thing left, his voice. But the question lingered. Could that voice, raw, untrained, unlike anything else, ever rise above the noise of the world's music capital? Rod's voice first echoed through damp pubs and deserted train stations, far from any spotlight. But could one fateful encounter change everything? In the early 1960s, Rod Stewart's musical journey didn't begin in polished studios or on grand stages. It started in small pubs and coffee houses with impromptu sets played for whoever would listen. There was no schedule, no agent, just a borrowed guitar, a battered harmonica, and a gravelly voice that made people turn their heads. Everything began to shift when Rod met Whiz Jones, a rugged folk troubadour with a wandering spirit. The two took to the road, busking through Paris and Barcelona, exchanging music for meals and a place to sleep. Nights spent performing in smoky cafes, often to little more than a few drunks, taught Rod something money couldn't buy: how to hold an audience with raw, unfiltered emotion. Back in London, Rod joined groups like the Dimensions and Shotgun Express, gradually shaping the distinctive blues-infused rock sound that would become his signature. When he covered songs by Sam Cooke or Muddy Waters, he didn't mimic. He reinterpreted them through the lens of someone who'd lived every lyric. In 1966, he joined the Jeff Beck Group alongside the guitar virtuoso Jeff Beck, touring the United States. Rod felt for the first time the electric surge of American audiences. After every blues number, the applause lingered a little longer. Still, true success remained just out of reach. After leaving the Jeff Beck Group, Rod joined Faces in 1969 while simultaneously signing a solo deal with Mercury Records. With Faces came wild freewheeling rock energy, but his solo work allowed him to dig deeper into heartbreak nostalgia and soul. His first solo album, An Old Raincoat Won't Ever Let You Down, 1969, was a tentative step. Gasoline Alley, 1970, started to turn heads, but it was 1971 that marked a seismic shift. On the album, Every Picture Tells a Story. A track called Maggie May, originally just a B-side, unexpectedly caught fire. American DJs couldn't stop playing it. The song, a bittersweet story of a young man's heartbreak with an older woman, told in that raspy, weary voice, struck a nerve on both sides of the Atlantic. The single shot to no one in both the UK and the US, a rare feat for any British solo artist at the time. From cold train platforms to the top of the Billboard charts, Rod Stewart had captured the world's attention. But with the spotlight came pressure. Tensions within Faces grew, fueled by creative differences. Though Rod didn't formally leave right away, his focus shifted toward his solo career, where he could shape his own sound, his own image. It was a turning point and the beginning of a musical empire. But as success came rushing in, the question remained, could Rod stay true to himself, or would fame carry him into a world he never imagined? Not everyone can get both vinyl lovers and Spotify listeners humming the same tune, but Rod Stewart can. Since 1971, Rod has released over 30 studio albums and sold more than 130 million records worldwide, placing him among the best-selling artists of all time. 11 #1 singles, 10 chart-topping albums and hits, like Do You Think I'm Sexy, Tonight's the Night and Forever. Young have embedded themselves into popular culture, etched into the memories of generations. Rod's success isn't just about numbers, it's about his ability to evolve. From rock and pop to Celtic-inspired ballads, he's constantly reinvented himself without losing that unmistakable edge. Fans fell in love with that raspy voice, that carefree swagger, but even more with the way Rod sang, like he was telling his own story every single time. He's been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, once as a solo artist and once with Faces. He's earned a Grammy, a Brit Award, and at the height of it all, was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II in 2016 for his contributions to music and charity. Many rock legends have sat on the throne, but Rod Stewart turned a childhood of hardship into a 60-year anthem the world still wants to hear. And that legacy lives not only in music, but in the tiles of a grand estate, the steering wheel of a Ferrari, and the tiny train cars where Rod keeps dreaming quietly off stage. Because Rod Stewart's place in history isn't measured by chart rankings, it's revealed in the places he calls home, the rooms where he unwinds, and the spaces where he continues writing his story. Each property is like a ballad tied to a chapter in his 6-decade musical journey. In 1991, at the height of his fame, Rod purchased a sprawling mansion in Beverly Hills, California. Once valued at $12 million, the estate, now estimated to be worth over $70 million, spans more than 20,000 square feet. It's not just a house, it's a Hollywood palace. Red-carpeted halls, sweeping French spiral staircases, a private recording studio, and an English-style garden manicured to perfection. In the living room hangs a portrait of Rod, painted by a close friend, his personal signature in a space filled with elegance. His studio has been redesigned multiple times, fitted with handcrafted soundproof walls and vintage analog gear, a loving tribute to the golden age of music. The estate also serves as a private haven for gatherings, both intimate dinners and impromptu jam sessions with fellow legends. Down in Florida, Rod owns a beachfront home in Palm Beach purchased in the mid-1990s for about $7 million and now worth close to $20 million. The house features a balcony overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, an Art Deco interior, and a lawn where he often plays soccer with his sons. In his study, Rod keeps a vintage microphone from the 1960s, the first thing he ever bought with money from a major record deal. In interviews, he's often said this is one of the few places he feels like just himself, not a star, not an icon. When off tour, he enjoys reading by the window with the ocean's waves offering a quiet, wordless melody. Most recently, Rod and his wife, Penny Lancaster, purchased a penthouse in Dublin, Ireland, valued at roughly $6 million. It honors Penny's Irish roots and serves as the family's Christmas retreat. The modern space includes a wide balcony overlooking the River Liffey and a cozy corner where Rod plays guitar and watches the city light up. On the bookshelf sits a vinyl collection Rod has curated for over 40 years. Each record a memory from early gigs to his Paris days as a young dreamer. For Rod, a house isn't just real estate. It's where the music lives and breathes. But no matter how peaceful a home might be, it can't quiet the challenges creeping in. Challenges of aging, of love, and of the way longtime fans look at their heroes. Not everyone drives a Ferrari out of passion, but Rod Stewart isn't just anyone. He doesn't collect to impress, he collects to remember. Beneath his Beverly Hills estate lies a garage more like a private museum than a showroom. Each car tells a story, a memory of triumph, love, or simply a remarkable ordinary day. One of the most striking is his Ferrari 458 Spider, its blazing red paint like fire under the California sun. He drove it up and down the Pacific coast in the early 2000s. The handcrafted leather interior shows gentle wear on the steering wheel, a sign that this isn't just a car he admired, it's one he truly lived with. He bought it shortly after signing a multi-million-dollar residency in Las Vegas, a well-earned reward for decades of hard work. Parked nearby is the Ferrari F8 Tributo, a supercar valued at nearly $500,000. Rod gifted it to himself after wrapping up a European tour. Every time the engine roars to life, he says, it reminds him of a crowd rising to its feet, an echo of the stage without the spotlight. The seats bear his initials, R.S., a subtle touch that says everything. Then there's the silver Rolls-Royce Ghost, the car Rod chose for his wedding. To Penny, its refined interior, rear-hinged doors, and dashboard clock engraved with the words, "Forever young, tell a different story." Not one of luxury, but of memory. He once owned a Ferrari Enzo, one of just a few hundred ever made. Now worth over $3 million, Rod says the proudest part wasn't the price. It was the fact that for the first time in his life, he didn't have to ask how much it cost. Laughing, he once said, "I'm not addicted to speed. I'm addicted to the feeling of being in control of something powerful with a calm hand." For Rod, each car isn't a possession, it's a moving chapter of his life. And no matter how fast the ride, it always circles back to what's real. Behind the spotlight, Rod Stewart spent decades building a quiet passion few knew about model trains. Inside a spacious room at his Beverly Hills mansion lies a miniature railway spanning dozens of feet, complete with stations, canyons, old towns, and train cars. He painted by hand. Rod doesn't outsource it. He builds it himself, cutting, measuring, gluing late into the night, adjusting tiny light fixtures, the way he once adjusted sound levels in the studio. The passion traces back to his childhood, watching trains roll through London stations. It became a lifelong escape, a place to disappear when the world gets too loud. He once said, "I can play for 50,000 people on stage," he joked once, "but placing a curved rail just right within a millimeter, that gets my heart racing." His model set has been featured in enthusiast magazines and is estimated to be worth between $150,000 and $200,000, not just for the scale or materials, but because every detail was crafted by Rod's own hands and heart. It's not a hobby, it's a way of preserving control, patience, and precision in a life that rarely slowed down. Family, the root behind the fame. Through all the mansions, the supercars, and the stadiums, Rod Stewart has remained committed to one thing above all: family. With 8 children from 5 different relationships, he's faced public criticism and private struggles, but he's never given up on being a father. His current marriage to Penny Lancaster, now over 15 years strong, has been his anchor, especially in recent years, as health concerns emerged. Penny isn't just a partner, she's a quiet presence behind the scenes, managing his diet, his schedule, and his well-being. Rod always makes time for Christmas with family gathering at their homes in Dublin or Essex. He enjoys cooking roast beef and has a tradition of gifting each child a meaningful antique rather than simply giving money. In a world of lights and applause, Rod Stewart has chosen to protect a quiet corner where he's not a star, just a father, a husband himself. No artist's life passes without scars. For Rod Stewart, those scars became stepping stones, each one a lesson in growing up and falling down and getting back up again. In the peak of the 70s and 80s, Rod was seen as the quintessential British heartthrob, a softer, more romantic counterpart to American rockers like Steven Tyler or Mick Jagger. Rumors swirled about his love affairs and carefree lifestyle, painting him as a restless soul. But Rod never hid from it. With time, he chose a slower pace, learning to protect what mattered and invest in what would last. His 1984 divorce from Alana Stewart wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was a moment of reckoning. Later, when his relationship with Rachel Hunter ended in the early 2000s, Rod took a quieter path. He put peace first for the sake of the children. No public disputes, no bitter words, just the quiet grace of a man who'd lived long enough to know that not all pain needs to be loud. His greatest challenge came in 2000 when he was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. For someone whose life revolved around his voice, it was a harder blow than any tabloid headline. He had to relearn how to sing from scratch, every syllable, every breath. In the studio, he spent long hours retraining his voice just to deliver a single familiar phrase. No lights, no crowd, just determination and faith. But life wasn't done testing him. In 2017, Rod quietly battled prostate cancer, only revealing it in 2019 during a charity gala in London. On stage, he said simply, "I fought it, and I won." Just 7 words, but the thunderous applause that followed proved something greater. People didn't just love his music, they deeply respected the man behind it. And then there's a lesser-known chapter, his relationship with Sarah Streeter, his firstborn daughter, who had been adopted when Rod was still a teenager. They reunited in 2008, not under flashing cameras, but in a quiet room where Rod looked her in the eye and said, "I'm sorry for the lost years." There was no song that night, but perhaps in that moment, Rod Stewart spoke more from the heart than he ever had on stage. He's not perfect, but it's the way Rod faced his struggles with calm honesty and courage that's left a lasting impression. Not just as a singer, but as a man who truly lived every chapter of his life. And the legacy. Could it be that what Rod leaves behind reaches even further than music? Rod Stewart isn't just a singer, he's a part of America's memory, even if his passport says British from Maggie May to Forever Young. His music echoed through FM radios from the 70s through the 90s, weaving itself into the daily lives of millions. With over 130 million records sold worldwide, Rod became a legend, not just for that unmistakable raspy voice, but for the honesty and heart behind every note. Twice inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, once with Faces, and once as a solo artist, he stands alongside the greats names like Bruce Springsteen and Billy Joel. But what truly sets Rod apart isn't just the music. He quietly supported the Barbara Davis Center for Childhood Diabetes and contributed to the New York Restoration Project, helping to rebuild parks and green spaces in underserved communities. On one occasion, he and his son joined a local trash cleanup in California. No cameras, no fanfare. When asked why, he simply said, "I grew up with nothing, so I understand the value of a single tree." For Rod, charity was never about image. It was a way to stay grounded, a quiet act of humility in a life lived under bright lights. And someday, there may come a moment like Glastonbury 2025 Rod, walking onto that legendary stage in front of 80,000 fans, no longer the boy who once worked at Highgate Cemetery, but a true knight, standing tall as thousands join their voices for Maggie May. It hasn't happened yet, but many hope it will, because that's how the world says, "Thank you to a legend." Rod once said, "I don't try to reinvent myself, I just try to stay true to myself." Song by song. And maybe that's why his music endures, not because it chased trends, but because it stayed honest. From a newspaper boy in London to a knighted artist, Rod Stewart didn't live to prove anything. He lived to show that no matter how many stages you step on, what people remember most is the heart behind the microphone. Is there something in his journey that reminds you of your own? From the grounds of Highgate Cemetery to the world's most iconic stages, from worn-out shoes to a knight's title, Rod Stewart's story isn't just about music, it's proof of something simple. You don't have to be born in the spotlight to become an icon. You just have to live truthfully and keep moving forward. Now in his 70s, he's still singing, still standing tall, and still doing what he loves with all his heart. And what about you? Is there something you're still chasing slowly, maybe, but never letting go? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so we can keep sharing journeys that inspire. Thank you for staying with us until the end. And remember, everyone has their own song to sing in this life. Tebi wa